If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Blog Talk Radio.
The following broadcast is brought to you by the iGolf Sports Network.
Golf Talk Live is sponsored by the iGolf Sports Network and Golf Tips Magazine. Here's Andrew to tell you more about our sponsors.
iGolf Sports is a live stream broadcast and media production company providing quality programming designed to attract the golfing enthusiast. And Golf Tips, the game's most in-depth instruction magazine, including reviews on the latest equipment, tips from top teaching professionals, all designed to help you improve from tee to green. Welcome to Golf Talk Live with your host, Ted Odorico. Join Ted each week as he speaks with some of the best in golf. This week's special guest will join us a bit later. But first up is another great discussion on Coach's Corner. So let's introduce tonight's Coach's Corner panel.
All right, everyone, good evening, and as always, welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, and we've got a great show for you tonight. As mentioned, we're going to start off with Coach's Corner. We've got a special panelist here tonight, a good friend of mine, PJ instructor John Decker, and I'll tell you a little bit more about him in just a moment. And then a little bit later on, my very special guest this evening is going to be Bryan Finnerty. He is the CEO of V1 Sports. He's going to be joining me. He's actually been on the show before, but he's going to come back, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what's been happening with V1 over the last little while, and a little bit more about him as well, about his background and what sort of brought him to the golfing industry. So we'll have all of that coming in our special guest interview a little bit later on in the broadcast. But as always, I want to thank you for joining me live here Thursday evening, and really excited about tonight's show. We're going to be something a little bit different here with the panel, but let me bring John on first here, and then we will get into the discussion. I'll explain a little bit more. So as I mentioned, my good friend John Decker is my very special guest panelist tonight here on Coach's Corner, and he's the Director of Instruction at the Medallion Club in Columbus, Ohio. He's also a senior editor and a top 25 instructor at Golf Tips Magazine. Prior, he was a head instructor at the Grand Cypress Academy of Golf in Orlando, and he was also the 2015 Southern Ohio Teacher of the Year. He authored a great book called Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game, which, of course, includes a Bible study. And he's also a public speaker, so you may want to reach out to him at some point and get him to come and speak to your group. So without further ado, let me welcome tonight's special panelist, my good friend John Decker. John, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Ted, for having me on the show. I'm looking forward to it.
I appreciate it. I always enjoy having you on, and we'll have an interesting discussion. It's just going to be you and I tonight. And what I thought we'd do, and I told you a little bit about this before we went live, what we're going to talk about tonight. So recently here, what I've done, as most of you that have been listening for the last little while know that I acquired Golf Tips Magazine March of last year. And in addition to the print magazine and obviously the digital version, we also have a great group that have signed up for our e-newsletter over the years. And one of the things I recently did, John, was I sent out a request over the last couple of months to encourage some of the followers, readers, what have you, of Golf Tips Magazine to reach out with some tip requests, things that they would like to get answered to help their game. And I thought we would tackle a few of them here tonight since it's just you and I. And so I've put together a short list of a few of them here. And hopefully some of them will be listening to the show tonight. I've tried to give them a precursor to this, say that we're going to talk about it on the show. But I'm also going to reach out through the magazine and obviously through the e-newsletter with some of the replies and that. But I thought we would tackle them here tonight. So on behalf of Golf Tips Magazine, these are some of the tip requests that have come in from you guys that follow the magazine. So the first one, John, is a gentleman by the name of Bryan M. I'm not going to use their full names. I'll just use their first name and an initial of their last name just for privacy issues and that. But he has a very interesting question here, and he says, please advise if the fundamentals of a normal grip applies to me with my reverse grip. Now, he doesn't really indicate. I'm assuming he's talking about as far as actually his swinging a club, whether it be an iron or a club, which is kind of unusual. I don't really see too many people that have a reverse grip unless it's a putting grip. So let's kind of tackle it from both aspects, Nat. So obviously he's talking about normal grip fundamentals. What are your thoughts here? And is it a little bit unusual? Have you seen too many people that have a reverse grip and actually hitting their longer irons or even their driver? What are your thoughts?
Wow, Ted, that's a great question. And I assume we're talking about the left-hand low as far as the reverse grip. I'm just going to throw that out. I have seen some professionals do that in some of the years ago, and I've seen a lot of times when I watch junior golfers, when they first grab the club, they will instinctively put their left hand on lower than their right hand if they're a right-handed player. So I'm assuming when you talk about the reverse grip, right, that's what they're talking about. So with that in mind, we're talking about the first thing is there's some advantages to that. I think that with the iron play, there could be some advantages, especially in the short irons. I do not think in the full swing driver and the longer clubs, the fairway clubs, that's going to be to your advantage, because I think that is going to actually produce a little bit of a hold on in their follow through. They're not going to be able to create quite as much club head speed. I always want someone, if they're right-handed, to hit the ball with their right side. If they're left-handed, to hit the ball with their left side. Now, the people that I've seen that typically have their left hand low in that reverse grip format are typically players who are the type of people who can pick up a ball and throw it right-handed and left-handed the same way. Jordan Spieth comes to mind. He throws the baseball left-handed and shoots the basketball right-handed. Just talented athletes like that. I think that they can get away with that more and produce some power. But as far as the fundamentals go, the main thing, no matter how you hold the club, you always want to hold the club in the fingers in the full swing. The only exception to that would be in putting. But other than putting, you want to hold the club in the fingers. So that would be the main thing. As long as the student is not putting the club in the palm of their hand, I think they're going to be fine.
I wonder, too, though, when I think about it, because it is a very unusual approach to things, especially as you said, and I think I agree with you. I think with some of the longer clubs like your driver and fairway woods, there could be some disadvantage. Irons, again, if it helps with their accuracy and being able to create a good position, I think it's okay. I wonder, though, because he's kind of specifically saying he's wondering about the sort of normal grip fundamentals, and I think what he's referring to is, typically when we grip the club, of course, again, we're talking about for right-handed golfers, you're going to grip it with your left, in your left fingers, if you will, and then you're going to take your right hand and grip it again in the fingers, and then you either have an overlapping, a 10-finger grip, or an interlocking grip. Typically, what have you seen on a reverse grip? I would kind of think, and I'm going to throw this real quick and then I'll get you to answer, I would kind of think in a case like this that maybe the 10-fingered grip might work a little bit better than if you tried to, interlock or tried to even overlap your fingers. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, honestly, I have not had a lot of the only time I've ever had the reverse grip come to me in a lesson was usually with someone who just had never played before, and that's how how I would give them the club, and that's how they instinctively would hold it, and then I would correct them. So they weren't used to holding it one way or the other, and that wasn't a big deal. But for someone who's been playing this way, I agree. I think that the 10-finger grip, and then a lot of times it depends on your hand size. Now, if it's someone who has really large hands, then there probably would want to be some sort of connection, like an interlocking connection. And I suppose that you could do that. I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't. But the main thing that I always look for with the grip, whether it's conventional or the reverse, is that the club is in the fingers, and that's something that so that you're not squeezing the club in the palm of the hands, because that takes away all your power, no matter how you hold the club.
Yeah, and the only other thing that would concern me a little bit, but again, if he's been playing this way for any length of time, I mean, this is literally what I read to you is all he had submitted, so there was very little extra information given. The only thing I would be concerned about having that reverse grip is typically, again, for right-handed golfers, your shoulders are going to align with your right shoulder being lower than your left shoulder because of the way, again, your right hand would be lower on gripping it normally. My only concern would be this would throw his shoulders in a different angle, which could potentially create problems. But again, if he's, and in golf, you don't want to have to make a lot of adjustments. Once you address the ball and you've got the grip right and so on and so forth, your ball position and posture and that, basically it's just a matter of swinging the golf club. And what you don't want to have to do is make other compensations throughout the swing in order to accommodate a specific position. So that would be my only concern with that. And I think, again, we don't know his age and that. And again, I don't necessarily believe in reinventing the wheel. If it's working for him, obviously it must be, or he's continuing to use it, is I would try to see if he can handle doing a normal grip, because I think he may find it. But again, it depends on what he's comfortable with. If he's working with this for a while and doesn't want to make any drastic changes, then obviously I don't want to change it and, run the risk of making it worse for him. But I think that, a 10-handed or 10-fingered grip, I think in this particular case, and
if you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Again, I would be very leery about going into some of the longer clubs like the fairway and the driver, like you said, because one of the things, too, that you have is again, as you're coming through, your left hand may want to kind of pull through a little bit quicker, and you could end up closing it a little bit faster than need be and end up hooking the ball a lot. So interesting question, and hopefully I will reach out to him and give him our response if he's not listening tonight. But it is an unusual thing. It's not a question. That's why I threw it in with the mix tonight. All right, second question that was submitted was by another gentleman, and he said, basically, and I'm going to kind of paraphrase as opposed to reading it exactly as he's got it, because he's obviously it looks like he may be Latino or whatnot, so his translation's a little bit off, but so I'll do it as best I can. He's talking about his average clubhead speed is about 95 miles an hour for a driver, and he'd like to get it to 105 over the next few years. He's 46 years old. He's working out in the gym, and he's using super speed golf clubs, which is a great training to help speed up your swing. But he still would like to see an extra 15 to 20 yards to get to a 5 handicap. He says he's currently now an 8. He says, I know it takes time, but do you have any advice to increase my clubhead speed over the next few years? And thank you. And his name is Jesus, and last name starts with a G. So let me throw out one quick comment here, and then I'll get you to respond. One of the things I think that I would look at here, he's obviously got a pretty good clubhead speed, and I'm sure he's going to want to work to get it faster. But the thing that stands out to me, and John, you may see this as well, is he's wanting to get to a 5 handicap. He's already at an 8. So that's only 3 points really to shave off of there. I would tend to say, rather than focusing on, trying to get that extra clubhead speed, certainly he could do that along the way, is I think there might be some spots in his short game that he could make up for to get him to that 5 handicap. What do you think?
Well, I think he is, first of all, doing a lot of good things. I love the fact that he's using the speed stick. I love the fact that he's going to the gym. I mean, those are going to help you increase your clubhead speed dramatically. What I would do is I've always said that one of the best ways to gauge whether you need more distance or whether you need to work on your short game is a simple test. Is to go out and let's say that you play on a golf course where you have forced like 3 sets of tees, and you're used to playing the middle tees or the back tees, doesn't really matter. Whatever tees you play, if you will move up 1 tee, so if you're playing the middle tees, you're going to go all the way up to the forward tees, and you play 9 holes. And if your score dramatically goes down, then you need more distance. But if your score doesn't go down and you shoot the same score or sometimes even higher, then you need to work more on your short game. So that's a little easy way that you can do it. And just, and it's also a fun way to play, because a lot of times, especially if you're playing the same golf course over and over again, it's kind of fun to move up and play a different tee like that. And so I know a lot of men may be resistant to do that, but I do that test with a lot of players, and a lot of the juniors, when I do that with them, they think, well, if I go up on the, I'm going to look silly, or, I'm way better than that. And they find out that, or they think it's going to be easy. And then they find out that, wow, it's a lot more, the driving areas are a lot more tougher up there. I've got to have more course management. And so, it's not as easy as I thought. But if you're playing if you move up a set of tees and then all of a sudden you start dropping 2 or 3 shots off your score, then yes, distance is what's missing in your game. Because what that's telling me is instead of hitting maybe a 5 or 6 iron, you're playing holes where you're hitting 5 and 6 irons into the greens. Now all of a sudden you're hitting 7 and 8 or 9 irons into the greens. And I think everyone will admit, when you're hitting a shorter iron into the green, the game is a lot easier than when you're hitting longer clubs into the greens. So that's
right.
A simple test for all the listeners out there. And it's a great way to challenge yourself and to make the game fun, especially early in the golf season. For those of us up here in the north, it's, getting out. The golf courses are playing long and wet. Give yourself a break and don't go play all the way back. But as far as, your comments about the short game, I agree with that, because you will find that when you're playing and you're getting down, and I remember those days when my handicap went from double digits to single digits and all the way down to scratch. I remember how difficult it was to shave off those last few shots. And then I started realizing, wow, I've got to make 1 or 2 more putts around, and I've got to stop 3-putting, and I've got to stop, I've got to be able to get it out of the bunker in 1 shot. And those are the type things that you can assess your game when you're really refining your game. But I think that's a great point. But I love I think Jose, I can't remember his first name, but I love the fact that Jesus, I love the fact that Jesus is looking at the fitness side, because he's doing exactly what you should do. Is if you want more distance, and here's the other thing, fitness is important no matter whether you want distance or not. It's important in all of our lives. But if you want more distance, the speed sticks are great. But another thing that you can do to increase your distance is make sure that, number one, you have a wide enough stance. So you need to be wider than shoulder width with your driver. And you also need to make sure and tee the ball higher. And I would also suggest that you go and get a driver fitting if you need more distance. Make sure that the driver that you have in your bag has the right flex, has the right loft. Don't just assume that you see the guys on TV using an 8.5-degree driver, that's what you should have. Maybe you should need a 12-degree driver, especially if your swing speed is under 100 miles an hour. So those are some little tips without seeing his golf swing that hopefully will help him, and that's a great question. But I love the fact that he's doing all the right things from the outside looking in.
Yeah, and I just want to add real quick. I agree with a lot of that as well. And again, without really seeing everything, there's other areas, as we have mentioned, that could help to get him down to that number he wants. The one thing that I would caution him about, certainly, getting in the gym and working on fitness is definitely important, regardless of whether it's for your golf game or not. The one thing that I would guard against, which a lot of guys particularly do, is the types of exercise and the type of fitness routine that they're doing. If they're doing things where they're using a lot of weight and they're bulking up, that's obviously going to be detrimental. I would like to also see him do things to help increase his flexibility, do lots of stretching, that sort of thing. Because, again, to add to what you talked about, getting that longer, fuller swing, being able to get a wider arc, a lot of times is not necessarily being stronger. It's just a matter of having the flexibility. So that would be things, while he's at the gym, certainly he wants to, use some weights and things like that, but not going down a path we see so many times where people try to build muscle thinking, because you're not really trying to force the swing harder. You want to be able to quicken the turn and that is a whole different area. So I hope that he's doing that, but I think those are some great suggestions. All right, I'm going to go on to number 3. This gentleman here wrote in and he said, my short game has been a nemesis periodically, distance control. He's a lot of times unsure what club to use and where. He sometimes might need a low runner or a quick stop. Hands and arms, are they bent, straight? Some days everything he says comes together, but without consistency. So consistency is an area here. And as he puts it, this is a mouthful, but I'm open for any suggestions. Thanks, John D. So short game, as we were just talking about, is an area as well that, as he puts it, is a nemesis. He's unsure of what clubs to use and where, and whether or not, how to use his hands effectively, and, whether his arm should be a little straighter, should be more bent. And obviously there's a variety of different shots that he could be talking about. But typically in the short game, if you're not consistent, what are some things, John, that he could maybe do to help create a more consistent short game?
Well, Ted, the key to, obviously, the short game is being able to control your distance, being able to control how far the ball goes. In the full swing, if you hit a 300-yard drive and then on the next hole it goes 305 yards, that's great. But in the short game, that will kill you. You have to be able to control how far the ball goes. So the first thing that I look at when I look at someone who has distance control issues is I look at their consistency of contact. Are they hitting solid shots? And most of the time they're not. And the number one reason we'll see students mishit shots in the short game is they stand too far from the ball. They set up they'll be 3 or 4 yards off the green, and the pin will be 25 or 30 feet away, and they set up like they're hitting a full shot. They're way too far from the ball. Their their swing goes too much around their body. They catch a lot of grass before they get to the ball, and then they have poor distance control because they don't have good contact. So the number one thing that you want to do is stand closer to the ball. You want to be closer to the ball. In chipping, I like to be about 3 club heads from the ball. Chipping, for the listeners out there, is a shot that's running to the hole. You're getting the ball. It's very much like putting. You're putting with a lofted club. You're literally getting the ball on the green, maybe a yard on the green, and the ball runs to the hole. Sometimes you can use a 6-iron and a 7-iron and an 8-iron for your longer chip. So if you have about 50 or 60 feet of green to work with, pull out a 6 or 7-iron and watch the ball roll across the green. It's a lot easier to roll that ball across the green than it is to fly the ball up in the air. If you have a shorter chip, you're using maybe a 9-iron or a pitching wedge. Then in the pitch and run shots, or pitch shots where you're maybe 10 or 15 yards off the green and you have maybe 20 or to 40 feet of green to work with, in those situations you're using a more lofted club, maybe your sand wedge, maybe your gap wedge, and in some cases if you're going over a bunker, you might be using a lob wedge. In those cases, you're still standing closer to the ball. And the easiest way to stand closer to the ball is to choke down on the club, meaning you don't hold it like at the very end, like you're setting up to hit a full shot. You choke down to the middle of the grip, and sometimes even down to the very bottom of the grip, like when you're right off the edge of the green. That's a great way to do that. And then the number one thing that you can do to get your contact more consistent is narrow your stance and lean your weight left into your left side. So when you narrow your stance, your weight can get more forward. If you set up like you're hitting a 150-yard shot and you're trying to hit a 30-yard shot and you have a real wide stance, that evens out your weight distribution so it's too much 50-50. And because of that, you're not able to get good contact. So creating what teachers, you'll hear a lot of people call angle of approach or angle of attack, where you're hitting down on the ball. The easiest way to do this is by setting your weight left. The more left you can set your weight with a narrow stance, the more up and down your swing goes. And then that's when your swing gets solid, or your contact gets solid. So those are simple things that you can do to improve the contact. And once you improve the contact, you do have to practice. You're not going to get better at this if you take these tips and then you try to go out and apply them on a Saturday afternoon when you're playing golf. It's got to be done in a practice session, or better yet, in front of a trained PGA professional. But those are some tips right there that would help the average golfer out there who's struggling with their short game.
Yeah, and just to isolate the last point that you made about practice, a lot of these guys, want a quick fix. They want to, what can I do to resolve this, or what can I do? And they want to take it out there without really putting it into practice. And they get out there on the golf course and they start making these adjustments without really testing it out and making sure that they're doing everything properly. And when it doesn't work, they get frustrated, and then they end up going back to the same, sort of defaulting to the same problems. So, regardless of what it is that you're being taught or told, you need to make sure you go out and put it into practice and try it out for a little while, and preferably do it, in front of your PJ or your golf coach, professional, and let them, make sure that you're doing everything correctly, and do it through a few practice sessions as well. And, then get out there and do it on your own a little bit to make sure you're grooving everything properly, because the last thing you want to do is think you're doing something right. You get out there and you try to put it into practice out while you're in the middle of a round. And, as I've said so many times, the wheels fall off the bus, and you're just not, getting the desired results that you want. All right, we're going to move forward, and I'm jumping ahead on one here, and then I'm going to come back to the other one here, mainly because this is sort of a pick-me-up from what we were just talking about. This gentleman here wrote in, and his question was basically about forward shaft lean. He's wanting to know what are the best drills and or aids for the average amateur to ingrain that forward shaft lean when hitting irons. This is Fred C. from the Villages in Florida.
Well, Fred C., I did a golf video on this. I love this question because I hear so much about forward shaft lean. You hear a lot of this when you're watching golf on television. So this is a great question, Fred. I'm going to give you this information as a right-handed player, but forward shaft lean does not come from your left arm, which is, I hear that, I see all these analysts on TV talk about, look where his left, the back of his left hand is ahead of the ball. And yes, that is happening. But the reason that is happening is because the right side of the body, if you're a right-handed player, is providing the power. You want to create a right side power move where you're using the right side of your body. So what the simplest way to create forward shaft lean is to hit small shots with, say, a sand wedge with just your right hand. You take your left hand off of the club, you swing back, and then you learn to turn through and use your body. And if your body is leading, if your body is rotating, you will create a natural forward shaft lean. What you don't want to do is not use your body and only try to use your arms to create that forward shaft lean. And what happens when you do that, most people just stick it in the ground. They stick the club into the ground. They don't have, and they hit a fat shot. So you've got to learn to use your right side if you're right-handed. Obviously, if you're left-handed, you're going to use your left side. So this is the simplest way. You don't have to go out and spend a lot of money on teaching devices to create this. But I think it's a great way to get that sensation for the forward shaft lean. And then what you progressively do is just make the swing longer and longer and longer, and then eventually you put two hands on there, and you'll start seeing that in your swing. But making sure that you can get that right side, coming and dominate, the right side rotation, and then the club catching up. There's a great way to create this is by, I know a guy that you interviewed not long ago, with Gary Player used to actually play, and when he was on the Champions Tour, he would actually hit shots, and he would have his right leg cross his left leg. And that's a drill that I love to use in my lessons. I do that with my students all the time. And, again, I did a video on that one as well. So that is something that I would recommend to help the listeners out there in creating that power. So they're creating that natural acceleration, natural rotation, and not trying to pull it through. Because, yes, those hands are forward at impact, but they're not forward because the left side is pulling. It's forward because the right side is rotating and extending through the shot.
Very good. So, Fred, I hope if you're listening that we helped you on that one as well. All right, Joe T. Sent in his question, and his question is very simple. He wants to know about releasing the club. How can we help him?
Well, releasing the club, if you're struggling with that, the first thing that you need to do is you need to look at your grip. Because if you are holding the club in the palm of your hands, you cannot release the club. It's like throwing a baseball. If I pick up a baseball and I put it in the palm of my hand and I try to throw it, it won't go 10 feet. If I'm going to throw a baseball, I'm going to hold it in my fingers, and that allows my wrist to be able to move. And when my wrist can move, guess what? I can release the ball. The golf swing is the same way. We hold the club in the fingers so that when we swing the club, the wrist can move. If we hold the club in the palm of our hand, our wrist can't move, and so you can't release it. So that is the first thing that I look at. The second thing I look at is grip tension. You know, if you're squeezing the club like it's your last dollar bill, you are not going to be able to release the club. And I get so many of my students who squeeze the club, and it looks like they're giving blood. I mean, their veins are just popping out. And I go up and I kind of put my hand on their forearms, and it's just like a solid. I mean, it's so solid. I'm like, there's no way they're going to be able to release the club. So grip tension is the second thing that you want to look at in releasing the club. Now, assuming that you do have a good grip and you're not holding it too tightly, then we have to learn the concept of letting the club head pass the hands. So, and what I mean by that is when you swing the club, you do not swing to the ball. You swing through the ball. The ball just gets in the way. It's like the fly into the windshield. The ball just gets in the way. And so a great drill for this, I learned this from my mentor, Phil Rogers, and he used to do this a lot with students in the bunker, because in the bunker you need to fully release the club to get the ball, get the club under the ball, get it into the sand and get the ball up in the air. So what he would do is he would have the students, if they're right-handed, take their right index finger and point it right down the shaft. So you take your normal grip, take your right index finger, point it down the shaft, swing that finger up in the air, and then try to point that finger down into the sand. So when you're coming on the downswing, you're fully trying to extend that right finger. You don't want that left side pulling. And so a lot of times when I look at people who have good grips, they're not holding the club too tightly, but they're using their left side too much in their downswing, and they pull the club. And that's why when they pull the handle or the grip, I call it pulling the handle. When you pull that handle or pull that grip down with your left arm, that's actually creating a slicing type motion, and that's why you see people slice the ball, because their club face opens up, and that causes them to hit the ball out to the right. So learning how to release the club is one of the most fundamental things. And if you're going to learn how to, if you struggle with this, the biggest mistake that I see people make is they try to fix this in their full swing. You must first learn to release the club in the short game, because if you can't release the club on a 20 or 30-yard shot or a bunker shot, then you can't release it with the driver. So you've got to learn to do it. I always say you kill two birds with one stone. If you'll work on a pitch shot or a bunker shot, number one, you're going to improve your scoring. You're going to be better at bunker shots and pitch shots, which has to improve your score, because the closer you hit the ball to the hole, the easier this game is. And the second thing is you're going to fix your full swing, because if you don't know how to release the club in the full swing, well, now you know how to do it. So now you have a better chance of taking that sensation and creating that same sensation with a driver or a fairway wood. So releasing the club is a major problem. I see that all day long as a teaching professional, and that's a great question, and I hope that some of those tips will help.
Yeah, I see it as well, and again, I think a lot of players, everything, we've talked about this before, everything really starts with the setup, good grip, good posture, and so forth. When you sort of zero in on the fundamentals and you get everything working the way it should be and set up from the very beginning, then more often than not, unless you do something intentional, you're going to do the things that you're talking about here correctly. What a lot of times happens, as you were pointing out earlier, is you see a lot of people not gripping the club properly, so they're not going to be able to release it properly. And, a lot of times they think, well, I need to strengthen or weaken my grip. Well, it may not be that at all. It may be just the way you're holding the club in a different fashion. Maybe you've got it, as you suggested, in the palm of your hand as opposed to the fingers, which, again, is going to create, a problem of not being able to release the club properly. So some great tips there, John. And Joe T., I hope you were listening. If not, as I said, we'll send you some of that information out. But appreciate your question. All right, we got another one here from Richard W. About iron play, another iron play issue. His problem is a little bit different than the earlier question on iron play, and that is his problem is not being able to consistently hit his irons in the center of the club and hitting the ball first. So he would appreciate any help that we could offer. So what I'm hearing here from him is he's probably hitting some thin, some fat, a lot of inconsistency. He's not hitting it, making good center contact. It's not the club itself. Again, maybe goes to the fundamentals, the setup, and so forth. Walk us through here. What can he do to create that more consistent ball striking?
Well, again, the first thing that I look at when it comes to iron play and inconsistency is I look at ball position, because I think that there is a lot of information out there that I consider old school information, where a lot of people assume that when you use a shorter iron that you play the ball, way back in your stance, and when you use a longer club, you play it more forward in your stance. That was the way I was taught when I was a kid. We're talking about the 1977 to 80 era in that time, and that's the way golf was taught during that time. That is not the way the modern tour player is playing now. The modern tour player is playing the ball more inside of the left heel, and it is much more of a rotary swing, whereas in the days of Johnny Miller and Tom Watson and Jack Nicklaus, even though Jack Nicklaus had more of a rotary swing, but a Johnny Miller and a Tom Watson had more lateral slide in their swing. Curtis Strange had that, a lot of lateral movement. Lateral movement is hard on the body, and lateral movement does not create club head speed. The players now are bombing it out there, and they're bombing it out there because they're in great shape and they have great technique. So for the average golfer who wants to increase their club head speed and wants to also improve their iron play, you need to have a consistent ball position. And that ball position, what I teach and the way I was taught, is right inside of the left heel. What changes in my setup with my irons, because I have a bunch of irons. I don't just have one, iron like I do with my driver. I have a bunch of irons. So what changes is my distance from the ball. If I'm using a shorter iron, I'm standing closer to the ball. If I'm using a longer club, I'm standing farther from the ball, but also the width of my stance. So the more I widen my stance, the more my center of gravity moves behind the ball. The more I narrow my stance, the more my center of gravity moves to the ball, and in the short game can actually move in front of the ball, like we talked about earlier, like in the chip shot or the pitch and run shot. So it's important that your ball position be consistent. And if you're out there on the golf course and you're playing the ball back on one shot and forward on another, you're never going to have a consistent golf swing. It makes a lot more sense to have a ball position that's just right inside the left heel that doesn't really vary. Then you have a chance to build a repeatable swing. Now, when I first learned this, I was about 25, and I remember that ball position moving from way back in my stance to way forward in my stance. And the first swing, I hit it fat, and I said, well, this isn't going to work. But after a while, I started learning I didn't need to move way off the ball. All I needed to do was turn back, and guess what? I turned through, and my club found the ball every time. All of a sudden, my club head speed started picking up. My consistency started picking up. So that would be the first thing that I would look at, and that's when I look at any golfer, the first thing I look at is I look at their ball position. The second thing I look at is their grip. So I would really go to that ball position. I would look at that, and I would also look at your distance from the ball. It's possible that you're standing too close or too far from the ball. So for this, I'm going to go back to I'm promoting the PGA of America here, but find yourself a good PGA instructor. or find someone online possibly as well. And what I would recommend is have them look at your setup and say, I want you to look at my ball position, I want you to look at my distance from the ball, and I want you to look at my grip. And I guarantee you one of those things is way off. And if one of those things is way off, then it doesn't matter what you work on in your golf swing. Until you get that thing fixed, you can try every tip on YouTube, you can listen to and read every magazine. Until you get one of those three things fixed, you're going to struggle. And that's when the consistency starts. I've always said a consistent golf swing starts with a consistent setup.
Yeah, I agree. I want to ask you sort of a follow-up to that, just so that people understand that are tuning in tonight to the broadcast. When you talk about inside the left heel, give us an idea of what you're talking about. I'll give you an example. You know, one of the things that I remember watching somebody that subscribed to the same thing is what they said to give you an idea was they would take in their case, they took, I think it was like an 8-iron, and they would turn it so that the toe would be up. And, you know, if they're standing up, they're not in an athletic position, but they're just standing up. And they would take the toe of that iron and put it against their left heel so that it was running parallel with their target line. And then where the hosel and the club head connect was about the distance from their left heel for their irons. Now, obviously not for their driver. Is that about what you would indicate as well, or do you have a different position that you think it should? How far in from that left heel should the ball be consistently to get that proper? And obviously, again, I know you're right foot for left-handed golfer, or right-handed golfer, is going to adjust depending on the width of your stance. But how typically inside the left heel do you recommend?
Well, what I do when I'm teaching ball position is I have all my students, when they're addressing the ball, start by putting the club behind the ball and putting their feet together so the ball is coming right in the middle of their feet. And then what I'll do a lot of times is I will put an alignment stick running from the ball right to their feet. So I want their feet to be basically touching an alignment stick. Or you can lay a club down and do the same thing. And then what I have them do is take their left toe and open it up and then widen their heel. Okay, and their heel, I have them widen it one golf ball. So if you were to take that alignment stick, like open your left toe up, widen your left foot, one ball, and put a ball, it should fit snugly between the alignment stick and the heel. And that's what I look at, is one ball inside of the left heel is what I teach. That's one way of doing it. And then you widen your right foot based on the club you're using. Obviously, a driver is going to be really wide. A pitching wedge would be more narrow. So that's how I do it.
Okay. That's a great way to do it. I just wanted for people, again, because they can't see, what we're talking about here, I wanted them to be able to visualize essentially what it is you're talking about. Because some people, again, have different ways of measuring it. And, you don't want somebody falling into the same trap where they're, putting a 2 or 3 ball lengths inside or taking their driver and saying, kind of put my driver head down there and getting distance. So I just want to see how you typically gauge that, and that gives them a very good idea. And I think it's very smart to do that in the manner that you suggest, because it's easier and repeatable. When you're out in the practice tee, you can be working on that specific fundamental, if you will, and getting that ball position correct every time. So that way, when you get out in the golf course, again, you can set the club head behind the ball, keeping your feet together, and then just making the adjustments as you suggest, and that way it's going to be in the same position every single time. Great answer on that. All right, we got one more. It's kind of an interesting one here. This is from Vern P. I don't know where he's from, but he said last year he struggled with his driver swing. He indicates he had both of his knees and his left hip replaced. He was out of sync and wasn't transferring his weight properly. And then the last game of the season, he kept his left arm straight and on the takeaway and the through swing, and he said everything seemed to come back, and it felt awesome. He got through the ball and squared the club and hit all of his fairways. He said he's 75 years old, so obviously he's an older gentleman, and he really is looking forward to play this season. He's also a single-digit handicap, so obviously this Vern can play. So really what he's asking, he's not so much asking a question, but he's wanting to make sure, obviously he's had a newfound vision, if you will, with his golf game, and he's wanting to make sure that the arms are functioning correctly in sync. So he's obviously had some physical issues here that have sort of put him back on his heels, so to speak. But he's, I guess what I want to ask here, so that we sort of cover what he's talking about here, is he's saying that when he sort of kept his arm, particularly his left arm, so obviously he's a right-handed player, straight on his takeaway and through the swing, it seemed to help alleviate some of the problems. Can we sort of unpack what he's talking about here and see if that can maybe shed some light for a few folks that may be in the same position he is?
Well, first of all, Vern, congratulations. You're 75. You've got a lot of golf ahead of you. So we want to make sure that you keep doing what you're doing, because I'm glad to see you out there playing, and congratulations on playing so well with that. When I look at the left arm, and I'm assuming and we're just going to assume that he's right-handed when he's talking about this. When I look at the left arm, keeping it straight, I'm not real adamant that the left arm is straight. I've heard other instructors say God gave you an elbow for a reason so that you can bend it. So your left arm is not ever going to be perfectly straight. No one is going to ever have a perfectly straight arm unless they're, without being in a lot of pain, and that creates a lot of tension. So we don't want to create tension. What I like to think of is extension. And so what may have been happening is maybe after he had these hip, like these replacements, I can't remember if it was hip or knee, but after he had these surgeries, a lot of times the body is designed. Yeah, 2 knees and a hip. So, there's a lot of surgeries there. And what happens is, I know this from personal experience, is the body tends to lock up whenever you're going to any kind of surgery, and you tend to, dealing with pain and dealing with recovery and those types of things. There's not usually people don't want to go do jumping jacks after they've had surgery like that. And so what the extension or that arm may have done, and I'm just speculating here, but it may have freed up and given him some more length in his golf swing. Because I find that a lot of times when golfers are recovering from surgeries, and I deal with this all the time, where people come to me and say, my shoulder was replaced, or my hip was replaced, or knee. And every time, the number one thing that I see them do is they shorten their swing. And that's because their body is tight. Their body they have not been swinging the club. They've kind of gotten out of golf shape. So I would recommend swinging, getting like the orange whip is it's excellent whether you're, I recommend it to my juniors, my women, my men, everyone that I teach, guys that are trying to play professionally. I tell them, you need to get this and swing it every day. You can do it in your yard. You don't have to bring it to the golf course. Just swing it to loosen up, or in his case, to lengthen his swing. And I think that's probably, if I had to guess without seeing the swing, I would guess that because he's had these surgeries, he was making a shorter swing because his body was a little protective and tight. And so by doing that, he was able to lengthen his swing. So I think the orange whip is good, or the weighted club or the speed sticks are good as well, creating that kind of motion and getting the body to swing back and through. But I'm glad to see that he's out playing golf, and I love to hear stories like that, and I hope he continues to get better and get down to a scratch.
Well, I think he's, from what I gathered, he's pretty excited to get back out this season. He obviously, despite the pandemic that had been going on last year, that he to get out there and play as much as he could, and obviously he's had some physical challenges along the way. But he, at 75 to be a single-digit handicap still is an accomplishment in itself. So. Yeah, you don't want to be monkeying around too much with that golf swing, but yeah, I think doing things like the orange whip, I have one, and it's a great product. It's why they're so popular, because they do work. A lot of these training aids and that they do work if they're used properly, and they can help them. I think with a lot of the issues that you talk about, and I think you're right as well, John. I think again, post surgery, again your body is sort of in a protective mode. And I think probably what's happening by keeping his arm, and I agree with what you said, and we actually talked about this recently on a show about that left arm, and a lot of people lock that left arm, which is not what you want to do. You're right. You do have an elbow, and your body, as a result of its rotation, the arm will flex slightly. It's not going to bend completely to 90 degrees, but there is going to be a slight flex in it. You don't want to keep it ramrod straight because that creates other issues. But you do definitely want to help keep it a little wider arc, if you will, in your swing and a wider pattern. And I think what a lot of folks do is they sort of almost like pick up the club and they're bending those elbows. So obviously he's been doing something that's working, and I think he's just wanting to share that because obviously he's pretty excited. So we want to wish him well, Vern, this season. But great answers tonight, John. I really enjoyed your perspective on this. As I said, these individuals have written into the magazine and are really looking to get out there and improve their games. And were very, very specific in what they needed help with. And I think you did a great job in helping to respond. So hopefully most or all of them were listening tonight. And for those that weren't, we'll certainly make sure we get that information out to them so they can get working on some of the things that you talked about. Great job.
Well, thank you, Ted. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, we got a couple of minutes left, and so I know that things are starting to warm up a little bit better up north, and I know you're excited. As I mentioned in the beginning, John is working as the director of instruction now at the Medallion Club in Columbus, Ohio. That's a new position for you. I know you're pretty excited about that. And what are some things that you're doing as we take a few more moments here before we sign off this Coach's Corner segment? What are you looking forward to most this season?
Well, I tell you, what I'm looking forward to most is doing the clinics and doing the group, getting back into group activities. Obviously, last year, because of the pandemic, all group activities were done. There was no more group instruction. If you were going to get a lesson, it was going to be private, one-on-one, and obviously wearing the mask and everything. And that just, I love teaching all different ways. I would get bored if all I did was teach groups every day, and I would get bored if all I did was teach individuals all day. I like to have a variety, and by missing that, I haven't given a clinic in over a year, and so that from that standpoint, I'm looking forward to that. In fact, I'm putting together the schedule. It's going to be turned in tomorrow, and we're going to get started with the ladies. We're just now starting to we've had a really nice spring here in Columbus, Ohio. I've been blessed. God has blessed me with a great opportunity at the Medallion Club to be the director of instruction in the club. And it's a young, active club with a full membership and a waiting list. And it's just, golf right now is so hot, and it's so exciting to be a teacher or be in the business or to be in the game right now, because it's just, there's such a demand to play, and people are coming to the game. And the pandemic has been it's been terrible for a lot of people, but I like to look at the positives on things. And in the case of the game of golf, it's benefited. The people they can go out and social distance, be outside in the fresh air. They can get away from their computers and sitting around the house and get out and start enjoying life. And I think that there's no better way than to play around the golf with your family or friends. And whether it's walking or riding the cart or whatever, it's just such a great game. And so that's what I've missed over the last year or so. And I'm really excited about the group atmosphere and getting back to that. And I just think that it's a fun way to teach. It's a fun way to learn, I think, especially for the women and the children. They really enjoy the group atmosphere a lot.
Well, I think it goes to that old adage, safety in numbers. It can be very intimidating, especially for a new person to the game to, take individual lessons. Sometimes I think in a group setting, people, believe it or not, you think it'd be the opposite, but actually feel more comfortable because they can kind of learn from one another as well as learn from the instructor, of course. but they can kind of, see that everybody else is, has their challenges and so forth as well. So I'm looking forward to hearing more as the season progresses, John, and as we, continue to communicate and hear about some of the great things that you're going to be doing for Medallion. I think they made a wise choice in bringing you on board as their director of instruction, and I think the membership is going to obviously take notice of a lot of the programs that you're going to be bringing to the table and other things as well. So kudos to you, and congratulations again on getting that position. And finally, what's the best way that the folks can reach out to you if they want to communicate, or if they want to have maybe similar questions that we discussed here tonight on the show? How can they reach out?
Well, first of all, Ted, I want to thank you for all that you do for this game, and for giving people like myself a platform to come on the show. I know all the instructors. I talked to them. We're all very grateful and thankful, and you do such a great job with your questions. And every time I'm on the show, I learn something, and I always do some great questions. I want to thank the readers out there for Golf Tips Magazine that sent in their questions tonight. I thought they were some great questions, and I thought this was a great format. And for those of you out there who are not subscribers to Golf Tips Magazine, I would encourage you to pick one up and maybe give it a try, because I think that you're doing a lot of great things with the magazine, Ted, and I'm really excited to be a part of that. For those of you out there who want to get in touch with me, I'm on social media under the name John Decker Golf Instruction, and I spell my first name Jon. You're welcome to reach out to me on Facebook. I have a fan page there, John Decker Golf Instruction, or you can look at under John Decker. You can send me a message that way as well. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, and I have several hundred videos on YouTube. Some of the questions tonight that were asked, a lot of those answers I put on video. And so if you go on there and put in some of the key words like about releasing the club, for example, if you put in John Decker, release the club, you'll find some videos that I've done on that. So hopefully the listeners out there will do that as well. My book, Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game, it's available at Barnes & Noble, websites, Amazon, and also Walmart.com. And if you're interested, I've had several people in the last couple of weeks reach out to me and ask for like an autograph book. I'll be glad to send a book as well. You can reach out to me on social media, and you can find me on one of those social media platforms. And then also with Golf Tips Magazine, the feature that you've allowed me to write is the Fairways to Heaven feature, which I've really enjoyed that. And that's I would encourage all of the listeners out there to go on and again, try the magazine out. We'd love to have you subscribe to it. And I know that there's a video format with that as well now. So, but Ted, thanks again for having me on the show, and I look forward to it every month.
I appreciate it, John. Thank you for all of your continued input, both with the magazine and outside as well. And I know the readers are enjoying your contributions as well. So thank you very much, my friend, for coming on and sharing some great advice to the readers of Golf Tips Magazine. Have a great week. God bless, my friend, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Ted.
All right, that was John Decker, PJ instructor, director of instruction at the Medallion Country Club up in Columbus, Ohio, and also a senior editor and one of the top 25 instructors at Golf Tips Magazine. Speaking of which, before I bring on my special guest, let's hear a quick message from Golf Tips.
The following ad is sponsored by Golf Tips Magazine.
Are you tired of being short off the tee? And what about those 3 putts? Forget about it. It's time you got serious about your game. Golf Tips, the most in-depth magazine in the industry. For over 30 years, Golf Tips has delivered expert content such as the latest golf instruction from America's top pros, simple-to-follow practice and game improvement drills, fitness and mental game tips, equipment, training aids, accessory and apparel reviews, golf destinations and travel tips for every budget, and so much more. Don't miss a single issue. Go to golftipsmag.com and subscribe today.
All right, and again, go to golftipsmag.com and subscribe today. It's well worth it. It's available in both the print and digital format. You can get either or you can get both. So check it out. Go to golftipsmag.com. All right, I'm very excited to have back my very special guest this evening, Bryan Finnerty. He is the CEO of V1 Sports. Let me tell you a little bit about him, and then I'll bring him on air. Bryan is also the founder and CEO of Opportunity Seed Capital, venture capital firm specializing in the sports and technology sectors. He also, as I mentioned, currently sits as the acting CEO for both V1 Sports and also Galway Bay, two leading golf companies under the OSC umbrella. Galway Bay is one of the golf's industry's leading outwear companies, and V1 Sports is the industry worldwide leader in video swing analysis software. So please welcome back my very special guest, Bryan Finnerty. Good evening, Bryan. Welcome.
Great to be back. Man, I tuned in early, and I was kind of hoping John would stay on longer. He's loaded full of great stuff, man. He is awesome.
Yeah, John's a great instructor. We've known each other for a few years now, and he used to actually be a director of golf down at Grand Cypress in Orlando a number of years ago, and then he's obviously up in Ohio now. And worked with, of course, the late Phil Rogers. So he had a good instructor helping him tune his game, if you will. And now he's repaying it with his students up there. And he just, as I was mentioning, you might have caught, he just became the new director of instructor at the Medallion Country Club up in Columbus, Ohio. They brought him in this year to work with their membership. And he's early in the season, but he's doing a great job already. They're very, very excited to have him. But yeah, you're right. He's a great guy. So Bryan, a lot has changed since the last time you were on. We're going to talk about some of that. Yeah. You were, Bryan, my apologies. It was, I think, a little over a year that you were on. So obviously a lot has changed. So let me ask you one question, because I didn't read this part out, but you obviously played soccer as well. In fact, you were a goalkeeper for 11 years. How did that prepare you, that experience? Maybe you can kind of go back a little bit, how you got into it, and did that help you as you move towards becoming an entrepreneur and obviously ultimately CEO?
Yeah, I think, I think different people have different takes on it, but it's interesting. My wife and I just got back from Penn State. One of our twin boys plays for the University of Michigan soccer, who is the goalkeeper, and they were playing Penn State in the semifinals of the Big Ten tournament, and they had a rough go. Penn took it to them pretty good, 4-1, and we were asking this question to each other. Do we think that these lessons are well learned? And quite frankly, I played at San Diego State, and as you mentioned, I got very good fortune to play 11 years of professional soccer, 10 of which were here in Detroit, which is our hometown now. My last season was in New York. But I think sports in general does that with people, with kids. There are so many things that you cannot control, and it is a lot about what you do next. And ironically, we were on the phone, I think it was back in June of 19, to really think about, we skipped some time. Right. There was a lot we couldn't control in that time. But we do talk about that at V1 at Galway Bay, that right now, as John mentioned, goodness, it's been, just an absolute explosion for golf, which has been desperately needed for sure as an industry. Compare that with what the downsides, obviously, that are going around the world. And sure, you really have to look at what you can control and what you can't. And I think that's one of the greatest things that sports does for us as people, is it forces us. The game, as I say, the game doesn't lie. And so when you're in there, if you work hard, the output will be the same. If you're cutting corners, the output's going to be the same. So I think it is a really good testing ground. When we look to hire people, we are looking for athletes. We're looking for people, and I call an athlete somebody who competed. So whether you were in a marching band, whether you were on the robotics team, whether you played tennis or golf or soccer or whatever sport you played, and I think I look at the kids today who are playing some virtual sports. We need to look at what makes them competitive, and we start to see these commonalities, and I do think it makes a difference. So sorry for the long answer, but I think it teaches us something about ourselves first, and then how we interact with others as part of a team. And then within that team, what are those different dynamics, and what do I bring out in the best of myself? How do I bring out the best in other people? And, lo and behold, 53 years later for me, I'm sitting at the head of a couple of companies. And oddly enough, it's not much different than when I was playing soccer 25 years ago. So, yeah, I think it works very well.
What's interesting, Bryan, is I think two things. I think first off, and from playing sports, I played a lot of sports as well. In fact, soccer was one of my favorite sports as well. I certainly didn't quite get to the level you did, but I was a pretty good soccer player. But it taught me playing sports something was not so much as we all want to win. Obviously, you want to win as every time you go out there on the field or out in the golf course or what have you. But it also taught me how to lose with dignity, but also how to take away from that loss. What did I learn? In other words, what did I learn from that loss that it can help me moving forward? And obviously, I'm sure this is something that you have learned along your travels before you got to where you are now, playing sports and things like that. And I'm sure that's something that you instill, with your son as an example. That he's not going to win every game out there, as he found out recently. But you want him to take away from, even though he didn't win, there's always something, a takeaway, if you will, that's going to help him the next time he goes out on that field, right?
100%. I won't totally try to blend business and sport here, but I can't help it because it is a snapshot into life, I think. So with my twin boys, Owen's at Michigan and Josh is out at Caltech playing soccer in California. And growing up, you could probably bring my boys on the show and they might give you a different answer. I mean, I coached them up until they were 14. And at that point, it was kind of like, even though dad might know his stuff, let's get them with some different voices in their lives and different mentors and some other people pouring into them. But through that, it was, it's going to reveal your character. So let's talk about, how did you prepare to play the game? Because if you don't prepare to play the game and you lose, as you'd imagine, and whether we're talking soccer, golf, whatever, I found with most kids, with most competitors, if they're not prepared to play the game, if and when the loss comes, which it does, and sometimes you get away with it, sometimes you win when you don't bring your best stuff, but sometimes you lose and you didn't bring your best stuff and you weren't prepared, the first thing that typically happens is someone blames somebody else, because it's easier to deflect that than it is to look introspectively and say, I didn't get enough sleep, I wasn't eating right, add to the list, right? But if you can prepare to win every time, and that's a pretty tall ask, but if you can prepare to win every time and you don't, then the learning light is on in my world, because then you can say it's not somebody else's fault. I did what I could. Now, what can I objectively take away? I'm a big fan of journaling. I think, especially in the heat of the moment, right when you get back to the hotel or back on the bus, just free write and ask yourself, what ifs? Not beat yourself up. What did you do great? After a big win, what did you do great? What do you wish you could take back? And I think those are the learnings we're talking about here. And when we're not looking back and saying, gosh, I wish I would have trained harder, I wish I would have X, Y, Z, because that's just rearview mirror thinking. But if I really am looking at the front windshield, I'm looking at tomorrow, and I want to know what happened today that I did learn from and I can take forward. Again, we do a lot of interviewing, as I'm sure you do with your businesses and your shows and all this. And it's a pretty easy place to interview some. You can tell me whether you're a good accountant or whether you're a good marketing person or whether you know how to write code if you're coming to work for us. But tell me a little bit about those instances in life, because I think I learned a lot more about somebody there than what their GPA was in school or, what internships they had. So, kind of blending those together, I think makes a lot of sense. What are those lessons you took away? And anytime I hear blame, I start to think, that's probably going to make its way into our office.
Well, it's funny. It's funny that you say that because, I've worked with a lot of different corporate types as well. I mean, I teach golf as John does, and over the years I've taught a lot of different CEOs and vice presidents and so forth. And what I always say to them when they come to me with a problem on the golf course, and I say, let me ask you something. I said, especially to the CEOs, I said, when you have meetings or you have presentations in the boardroom, do you prepare for them? And of course, the obvious answer, well, of course, I put together this and we put together that and we do our presentation. I said, that's what you have to do when you play golf. Now, obviously, you're not going to do that during the round, but you do that before the round. You do that during practice sessions. You prepare. And it's amazing how many of them do not do that. Now, the really good ones do, the guys that obviously that played for a long time that finally get it, but a lot of them don't. And they get out there and they can't understand why their game's not improving. But yet they can go into a meeting in a boardroom or a sales presentation, and they can be fully prepared and have all the answers to every obstacle that may, arise. But when it comes to their golf game, they don't put that same effort. I said, if you put the same effort in preparing for your golf game as you do in your boardroom presentations, you're going to become a much better golfer. And it's amazing that when they start to do that and they start to actually prepare and they analyze where they've been and what they've done, as you pointed out just a moment ago, it's amazing how the light comes on. They say, oh, yeah, you know what, now I understand. I see where I'm going wrong here. And they start to formulate a game plan. And that's something that I help them with, of course, at some point. But I want them to take that sort of introspective personality and look at things in an inside instead of, as you said, blaming everybody. And that's unfortunately what a lot of people do. And it's not always an easy thing to get them to change, but eventually we do. I want to. You mentioned something when you were describing your twin boys that I want to ask you. You obviously had mentors as well as they did. Who were your mentors?
Oh man, they've evolved. I won't bore you with the whole list, but going back to my San Diego State days, it was the young entrepreneurs that looked like what I wanted the next version to be. Bryan Warner comes to mind for me, and he kind of let me work for him. He probably looked back and say, man, he was such cheap labor. But he put his arm around me. He was a mid-20-somethings. I was an 18-year-old kid and had the entrepreneurial spirit, and he really shepherded me through that time. And I looked at him and his life and said, that's someone that I aspired to be. There were professional soccer players in San Diego where I grew up, so I got to spend time around them. Right now I've got 4 guys, even at the age of 53, I've got 4 guys that 3 of which are older and one's a little younger that pour into my life. And, it's not always the hard stuff of hey, we're going to hold you accountable if you said you're going to do this or not. It's just some open book thinking and some challenging thoughts, right? Are you walking the walk? And we're big fans of that. But one of the things that I've come to realize through these mentors this last year is sort of this gremlin, as my wife, who's a life coach, that there's this term, what's the kind of thing that holds you back when it does? And for me, it was this, you got to fake it until you make it. And I really believed that for 35 years, that you got to fake it until you make it. And the challenge with that is you're constantly looking over your shoulder to wonder, is anyone going to catch me faking it? Whatever that is that you're doing. Right. And so I've really reshifted. I put this in front of my mentors, and one of them, Tony Simaruski, who is a very successful business manager, but also a leader in young life and a great father of 4, awesome husband. He said, what if you flip that around and said, why don't you make it so you don't have to fake it? And I thought, man,
yep.
I mean, that's a quest right there. It's a life-changing quest for me to say, I mean, we're pushing it into our business. We're basically saying, again, it goes back to practice, right? Are you willing to do the extra so that when you get there, you don't have to pretend you did? You were there.
Right.
Now, the chips might not fall your way. That's okay. But yeah, I've been very blessed to have mentors. And I'd say this because I get this question, especially if I'm speaking at some colleges. I spent some time at University of Michigan in the Ross Business School with the groups there. How do I do that and what do I do? And my big thing is be proactive and show up. I can't tell you how many, I'm 53, so I'll say kids, right? Anybody 40 or younger is probably a kid. They want a mentor. They think they want a mentor. You put them under some, okay, here, I'm going to give you some homework and I'm going to ask you to lean into this. And oddly enough, 2 months later, no email, no text, no phone calls until the next troubling thing comes up. And it's like, hey, can you help me bail myself out of this? Like this isn't a get out of jail free card. I'm going to be with you because I need you to do the heavy lifting. I'm just here to kind of help. And the 4 guys who work with me right now are just fantastic at that, right? And if I don't hold up my end of the bargain, why would I expect their time? So I know that wasn't the exact question, but I do think is if any of the younger listeners, again, younger golfers or just thinking about business, I highly encourage you to find someone that is in the next place that you want to be You don't have to go try to get a hold of the president of the U.S. if you want to be president someday, but how about a local council person and then maybe a state senator? And there are steps along the way in every one of our journeys that you can start at that next one. And it's okay after a couple of years when you get there and say, okay, who's the next person who I'm going to help? And at the same time, am I reaching backwards, and who am I going to help pull up, right? Because it's a two-way street.
Right. I agree. Yeah, you always have to give back. If you've been blessed and you've been given, you always need to give back, and I agree with that. And that's a great point that you make. Is you really have to, you have to lean into whatever it is that you're faced with. And I think that too many people try to fake it. Too many people try to go out there, and I can always tell when somebody comes to the lesson tee, whether they've done any bit of homework or tips or drills that I've given them. I don't even have to ask them; I can just tell. But most of them will volunteer and say, again, the excuse train pulls up on the tracks into the station. I mean, as soon as they walk up and say, "Well, I didn't get a chance to get out like we discussed, and I didn't really get a chance to do this and do that, and I was hoping we could kind of recap, the last lesson and so on." And, so we're spending the first, 15 or so minutes trying to go over that. So I've gotten to the point now where I stop doing that. I just say, no, we're not going to do that. I've actually even gotten to the point where I've canceled lessons. I'll just say, no, we're not going to do that, because if I'm going to help you achieve whatever your goals are, then you've got to bring your part to the table as well. It's not just a matter of, writing a check or paying for the lesson. You've got to be willing to be proactive. And if they're not, then they're just wasting not only their time, but they're wasting my time as well, because I'm not going to be able to help them if they're not bringing their side of it to the table. So, and I know you've seen this, and again, we're not trying to stand on a soapbox here and tell everybody how they need to live their lives, but, this is the difference between people who, achieve their goals and move forward in life, is they're willing to make those commitments and do these things. And again, you're going to fail, you're going to fall off the chair a few times along the way. That's a given. And that's actually a good thing, because you're going to learn from those if you do things properly. I mentioned in the beginning as well, for a lot of people that don't know, you began your entrepreneurial and career started to really change, and you founded again your company Opportunity Seed, and through that process you've worked towards building a great staff and obviously clients and so forth. This has been going on now for a little while. How has your vision for Opportunity Seed evolved?
Great question. When we first started it, quite frankly, it was the whole idea was we started really a foundation called Opportunity Seed Foundation. Opportunity Seed Capital did not even exist. And so Denise and I wanted to address, we may have talked about this on the last one on the show, but we wanted to address the pay-to-play sports conundrum. And we wanted to do that off of our own balance sheet. So I wasn't going to go out and do a bunch of fundraising. We didn't want people writing checks. Love with people want to join us in that journey, absolutely. But we didn't want to be the repository for the money to go do that. We wanted to be behind the action. And we did find that, as we all know, money talks. And so I got fired from that job by my wife, and she said, why don't you go start Opportunity Seed to fund the foundation? So as we invest in companies and they grow and sell, or if they throw off positive cash flow, we put all that money back into the foundation, and we encourage the owners of those companies we invest in to do something of similar nature. It is not a demand. Everybody can do what they want to do. It could be as little as 1% or as much as 100%. It is totally up to them. But what has changed for us has been, rather than just write checks into organizations, we've truly come alongside of organizations with education and equipment. We found that to be a really, really hot touch point, because it lasts when you teach somebody, like anything, right? Teach a man to fish, he'll eat forever. Give a man a fish, he'll eat for that day. The same thing goes with sports in school. So we find that curriculum works. Equipment does wear out, so you got to help them replenish that, but showing somebody how to do that. And it's really evolved the Opportunity Seed Capital to not doing startup work, because that truly is high risk. It certainly is high reward, but in the kind of swing for the fences thing you do when you invest in startups, it takes a lot of time and energy. And I'm a better focused person on building high-performing teams than I am getting someone to positive cash flow. So V1 is a great example. It was almost a 20-year-old company when I first invested. Took over as CEO 3 years ago with this idea that let's really ramp this thing up and let's go get some more capital to do that. That's a really good spot for me because that's about team. I don't care whether you're building software like we do. We're going to be launching our own personal launch monitor here at the end of the year. It's about the team. And so that's a really good spot for me. And I found when I focused there, so Galway Bay was another good example, and a few others that have been, let's get them when they're already in sort of cash flow neutral. And as they grow, that's been a shift for us. So, and thankfully my wife saw that a long time ago, which is go do what you do great. I mean, literally it's exactly what we're talking about, right? Go do what you do great. It's probably why she's put up with me for 30 years. And when we do that, it's tough to go to sleep, and it's so easy to wake up in the morning. And I can go back to the person sending a lesson to you that's a CEO of a company, and you say, look, you'd prepare for a board meeting, right? But wouldn't you prepare to be here for the next lesson with me? And I think that's a really important question because I ask it of my staff and those that work around us and those partners that we join up with. Like, if you don't love doing this, if you don't love the work to get ready for the game, this isn't the right place for you. And you say you want to be a 3 handicap to go from a 10 to a 3, but if you don't love the work, just be a 10. Enjoy it. Grab the club out of the trunk, play once, twice a week with your buddies and be a 10 and just enjoy that part. Because if you don't enjoy the work, being a 3 handicap is not going to matter because then you're going to have to maintain it, right? The same as our company. So, I think I've learned that about Opportunity Seed. When we invest in companies that I really love the work, nothing's a guarantee for sure, but darn if great things aren't happening. So, we do look for that. Like, do you really enjoy the work?
Yeah, you have to. It's with anything that you do, you have to enjoy it. And if you're not enjoying it, then it's a miserable experience in many cases. And sometimes you have to start in one place in order to get to where you want to go, and that's different. That's something that we're talking about is much different than that. So let me ask you about V1 specifically. Really what you wanted to do was to really help build solutions for not only the golf coaches but golfers as well, and you help sort of build a community, if you will, giving really the choice for golfers and also the power for coaches to be entrepreneurs themselves. How did you accomplish that? What was when you took over 3 years ago as CEO? What was it you wanted to do? Obviously, you needed to invest some capital in that. But what was the vision that you had for V1 Sports at that point? What did you see happening?
I'm laughing because this is going to sound so stupid simple. We asked. For 20 years, V1 had done nothing but tell its story of we have this telestration tool. We have a video recording tool. We have virtual lockers that you can take your lesson that you just did and deliver it to your student. And we told instructors this is what we had. Thankfully, we've got, I think almost 17,000 of them now. They were very gracious with us, and we delivered. I don't mean to demean the company, but really it started about 5 years ago, and this is where we started the shift in the company. And then 3 years ago, fully, grabbing the helm as a CEO, and Chris McGinley helped in this transition, who's now back to work with us, which is such a gift. Was really let's stop and let's ask pros, what do you need more of? Well, oddly enough, it wasn't always about money. And I could say that in any industry. I say that to the people teaching soccer or tennis or attorneys. A lot of them said time. I'd love some time back in my life. I'd love to go see my kid's baseball game on a Saturday instead of sweating out on a range leaning on a 7-iron. But, the sun's only up so many days of the week and only so many hours in a day. So we listened to that, and what we did is, the pandemic put it front and center, which is you can teach a lesson with somebody not having to stand on the tee in front of you. I mean, this with the magazine. It's about sometimes consuming content. It's about self-guided practice. It could be about me grabbing my own swing and sending it to Mike Fay, who's at my place at Walnut Creek, or to Chris Como down in Texas, or to Michael Breed out in New York, or to Darren May down in Florida. But the idea was we're going to reshift this, and that when the sun is down, which it is here in Michigan, I can start doing 10, 12, 15 online lessons, and I actually might be more on point, more succinct, And my inbox is actually going to be full of people who you and I are just talking about that actually want to put in the work, because they wouldn't be doing this part.
Yeah.
Showing up on the range is kind of like, crap, I did book with you 2 weeks ago, didn't I? And I don't want to leave that as a hole in your lesson booking. The online stuff is like, no, I'm here. I recorded my thing. I'm willing to pay you to give me stuff back. So we gave them time, and we also gave them a way to do better lessons, which, again, the money always follows, right? So if I get time back in my life, I'm more energized. If I'm doing a better lesson, they're probably going to tell 2, 3, 4 of their friends. You can see how this thing, again, it was so simple. We didn't have to completely reconfigure V1. We didn't have to, build brand new colors and sexy widget buttons. We just had to reconfigure how that was happening. And of course, we've upgraded the software to follow that suit. But, it was great for the pros. And we also found it was really great for consumers at large. So if you look at 2 years ago, we might have had 1 million something. I think we had just crested 1 million consumers in the ecosystem. We're almost at 4 today.
Wow.
And again, all boats rise with the tide. So I would be, saying something that wasn't true if I didn't say golf significantly got a boost in this last year. We would say, once again, exactly what we're talking about. Did you do the work before the opportunity came? And at V1, the answer was absolutely yes. We were doing this work in 18, 19, and when 20 hit, a lot of companies were scrambling like, crap, what are we going to do? How do we do something on Zoom or Google Meet? And what we were saying is, and to the likes of Troon and Club Corp, big corporations in our industry, guys, we already have it built. Your clubs are on lockdown, but you're looking for a way to communicate hundreds of pros at a time with literally 100,000 members. We've already got the platform. So, again, I think we put in the work before the game started, and, we're standing here in a good spot because of that. So, again, that old sports analogy, it still plays.
Yeah, and that's important too, Bryan, because, you're right. This pandemic taught people a lot. One of the things that we've seen is, as you mentioned, there was a big influx of people coming out to the game because, quite frankly, they were, tired of sitting at home and not being able to do anything. And, there's only so much Netflix you can watch and Amazon and all this other stuff. And people just, partners, spouses, what have you, were, trying to find a way to get away from one another. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but, you get under that roof and you need to get out there and do things. So, and one of the things I agree wholeheartedly with what you just said about, being prepared. I've recognized it firsthand with the magazine, how many people that we communicated with, whether it be advertisers and so forth, that didn't know what to do. Even some of the pros couldn't. I mean, I know a few of them that increased their bookings by as many as 100 people within just a few short months because people were coming out to the golf courses. And it all boils down to time management. I mean, you can only physically give so many lessons a day out at the lesson tee, especially if you're here in the Southeast or even the Southwest where it's hotter than Hades. And, you're losing 20 pounds standing out on the lesson tee in just a few short hours. So you need to be able to find ways. And there were a lot of people that didn't know what to do. And you're right, V1 was there. You had that platform already prepared, years in advance. It was almost, I don't want to say that you foresaw this happening, but you were prepared for whatever may come around the corner. And, my concern now moving forward is as we start to come out of this, what is the golf industry going to do to take advantage of these gains and not lose these opportunities? Because there are a heck of a lot of people that have come out to this game that have never been here before. What are your thoughts there? How do we move forward as an industry so that we don't lose this opportunity that we've been given?
Oh boy, I'm a big fan of John Maxwell, and when John Maxwell says, the road worth being on is the one that's uphill, and anytime you find that your feet are off the pedals and you're coasting, look out. And I would say for us as an industry, and you're in it as much as I am, that I think we're a little bit drunk with how fun it is being here. And I, for the guys that I'm talking to and the gals I'm talking to, this is, I think, a really good time for us to dig back in, because it's going to be a stair step. It's not a straight uphill deal, that we've got a chance to kind of catch our breath before the next tread. And, when you look at a blown out view, it does look like a nice uphill, grass going left to right? Wow, look at the game. This looks so awesome. But to me, the really good ones are when you zoom in and you go, no, it was actually a bunch of little tiny up, flat, like steps. And on the flats, we're working hard. We're reinventing. We're asking more questions. We've got almost 5 million new golfers, and I think that number is going to probably double here by the time we get done really counting it. 5 million new golfers that aren't just, and no disrespect to someone who goes to Topgolf one time. Welcome to the game. That is awesome. But there are 5 million more that have said, I'm actually interested in playing around a golf beyond just the company outing or, again, going to a drive shack or a Topgolf. My question is, as an industry, what are you asking them? And again, I go back to we're not perfect at V1 by any stretch here, but maybe we should be asking them, what is it that you want from this game? And my guess is they're not going to say, I want a bunch of stuffy rule-making, blah, blah, blah,
No.
They would have been in the game before. They're going to say, hey, is it okay if I play some music on a golf course? How about 9 holes or 12? Can practice be? I loved what John said. I'm so excited to go back out and teach in group environments. We've opened that up at our club, and what used to be for juniors and I'd say ladies coming out because it felt social, I look at our new members at the club who are part of this first group. They're just joining a club for the first time. They want to be in a group. They want to do chipping lessons in a group of 6 or 8 or 10 because they don't want to just be standing there singular focused. They want it to be mixed up and have a little competition. And hats off to Mike Fay at our place, and I'm sure thousands of pros around the country, if they're asking those questions, guys and gals, what do you want from this game? Because if we're going to be here for the next 20 years with better numbers, that's the question. And then we got to be prepared to respond to what their answer is. Instead of, go back to V1. If all we're doing is telling them what golf is, we're probably going to be back in the same boat we were 5 years ago.
Right. And that's my concern as well, because I think what we have to be able to do is we have to be able to adapt to an ever-changing market. Again, I concur with what you said. I mean, it's great that, organizations like Topgolf and others have brought people in that maybe never have, thought about the game. But again, we want to get them out on the golf course. We want them playing. And one thing that concerns me, and this has been going on for several years now, is we're not seeing the handicaps budge hardly at all. And that's not through the fault of poor teaching or anything of that nature. It's just that we need to maybe shift our focus on what we're doing and how we're helping these individuals and educating them in the right ways. And not just, because a lot of times we get as instructors, you get people coming out looking for a quick fix. You guys hear about it all the time, I'm sure, as do the instructors working through V1. And, everybody wants this quick fix. Well, it doesn't exist. That's the truth. And I think we've got to, as an industry, got to work together. Another area that concerns me a little bit, Bryan, is I had a guest on a few weeks back, and he talked about how, through the pandemic, we had, approximately 400,000 plus young women come into the game, which was a huge uptick. Of course, that's been going on for a few years, but particularly last year. But on the opposite end is we're also getting a lot leaving the game. So, it's great that we're getting them coming into the game, but what are we going to do to make them stay in the game? And I know you touched on some of that, but what else can we do? What specifically do you think we can do as an industry to not only encourage them to come to the game, but what do we do once we got them here?
I'm going to give you my answer, which is not going to be popular in a lot of golf circles, which is I wish we would stop equating someone's enjoyment with the game with what their handicap is. And I think that's one of our challenges that, and I get to see it, right? So I'm a 5. I know this journey. It is, especially as a male, it seems to be some kind of a badge or a flag that you wave. But the reality is for our companies, we have things like Net Promoter Score. How likely are you to recommend V1 in this case to someone else? Whether I'm talking to Golf Pro, right? What's your Net Promoter Score with golf pros? What's our Net Promoter Score with golfers or sports enthusiasts who are checking this out? I think golf, if we're really going to move in the right direction, and I don't know the answer to what tool it is that we use. I'll just use NPS, but if there was a way to gauge how much fun do you have in the game, you've worked with way more teachers than I have, and I've been so blessed to see guys at the highest top level, we'd call them, the guys you see on Sunday doing the illustrations, all the way down to a guy who's just graduated from Ferris State and trying to hang a shingle somewhere. The ones to me that are the most successful don't ask what you want your handicap to be. They're asking them, what do you want to do that will make this more fun? What a stupid, simple question that would say, you know what, I just don't want a 3-putt in front of my buddies. And you know what, put the driver back in your bag. You don't need to add 15 miles an hour onto this. I'm not going to put you on a speed training thing. Let's go to the short game area and really talk about how do you get into the range that's not 35 feet away. That's the first part. That means we're going to get your wedge when you're out 25 yards, and we're going to work on that. Well, you start working on that. I'm just giving that as a stupid example, but I know there's no way to keep track of that. But to me, at the end of the day, as an industry, we want more rounds of golf. And there are not going to be more rounds of golf if people are not enjoying it as much, barring weather and a few other things. So I think if we really do that and we start with ourselves as instructors and I'll say the keepers of the game on the instruction side, it might be, let's maybe not listen to the powers that be up above us that are saying handicaps need to get lower and change. That'll prove that something. I say if we meet people where they are, if we literally, Golf Tips Magazine, it's such this incredible tool because it meets people where they are. It wouldn't exist otherwise. What do they want some instruction, not standing in front of today's instructor, but they want to do it on their time. We call them the DIYers. Fantastic. The more we can give them access, we're spending a lot of time on this at V1 as we ramp up to have V1 TV in place by the end of the year. It is exactly about this. We know that only 15% of the golfing population since the early 70s when they were tracking it, only 15% of our 30 million golfers take a lesson in any given year. That's enough to sustain our teaching pros for sure. But what if that number, if we also included video lessons and we also included not just YouTube content that was shoved out there, but it was really, the more you knew about me, the better you served me content, right? Just like Pandora. Pandora knows not to serve me, in my case, country music. It just knows that about me. I grew up in Southern California. I typically like a little punk rock with some 80s music. That's just me. That's what I tend to like. Why does it know that? Because of what I search and what I do and what I thumbs up and what I don't. If instruction were the same way, that we say your best instructor doesn't actually have to be where you are. Okay, that might change some things about this game. And V1's only one small part of that because the instructors have to be there putting content. We've got to have systems that work within that. And we need an industry that isn't saying you get measured by your handicap. Because going back to your CEO standing on a tee box that may a lesson range that may not have done his homework, his handicap's not coming down. If you don't enjoy the work, your handicap's not going to go from a 10 to a 3. So anyway, I definitely get, as you can tell, I'm fired up about that.
I'm glad you are because I agree 100%. I think the other thing too that we want to really get into is to have, as you said, people enjoy the game, and whether they're shooting 100 or whether they're breaking par, if they're having fun, it doesn't really matter. If they want to improve, they're going to take the steps that needs to be improved. I think one of the biggest criticisms I've had and believe me, I'm a big critic of this industry. I love this industry. I've been around for a long time. Is the fact for a long, long time, especially from the instructional side, is put everybody in one box. Let's teach them all this way or let's teach them all that way. And as we're finding out now in more recent times, is we are all individuals and everybody learns differently. Some are kinesthetic, some are visual, and so on and so forth. And you've got to meet them where they are. And you're exactly right. You can't just sort of lump everybody into one box and try to teach to the masses that way, because it doesn't work. Because some are going to get it, but many are not. And that adds to, I mean, I know a lot of people who have said to me, whether it be through the shows or otherwise, have said, look, Ted, I've got people who have come out to the lesson tee and said, look, they're tired of instruction. What can you do for me? I've gone to 2 or 3 others, or I've watched all these videos and it's confusing. They're getting a lot of mixed messages, and it's just not, it's not servicing them well. So they draw away from the game. So we've now had this resurgence with, unfortunately, through a pandemic, we have another bite at the apple, and we've got not only a new group, but we've got a resurgence of golfers that maybe drew away from the game for a few years, or what have you, said, hey, I've got to get back out there because I don't want to be stuck at home. So we've got another bite at the apple there as well, and we can't blow it by going down the same rabbit hole that we have for the last 20 years, as you said. I want to move on because I know there are a couple other things that you want to get out here. So number one, you guys also launched V1 Baseball, right?
We did. Yeah, it was I'll say an interesting and very good timing. We had just moved. So we used to supply all the back end, much like we do in what our customers are used to in V1 Golf, where you could capture video, telestrate on it, send it to an instructor, everything that we had just gone through. We were providing the same tools to a company called RVP, Don Slott, who's a very famous Major League Baseball player, using it in baseball and softball, but it was called RVP, Right View Pro. And so we were the back end, and Don said, look, I really want to move kind of away from that platform and start a company called On Base U, which is partnered with the guys at TPI, much more about kinematic sequence, what are the strengthening things you can do to get a baseball swing, much like Dave and Greg had done for many years successfully with TPI. And so he came to us and said, I want this baseball teaching component to live on. So he worked with us. We acquired his company. We relaunched it as V1 Baseball. And, thankfully for us, baseball is probably 5 to 7 years behind golf in its exploration of technology. Mm-hmm. And between the Simple app, which, our listeners or your listeners have embraced for over 20 years, baseball is absolutely devouring it. I mean, it has been great. You add that with the pressure mat, and it's the same rotational forces as you'd imagine in golf.
Sure.
Pitchers are loving it. We actually went down to the Pittsburgh Pirates during spring training years ago, put it in their minor league system when they were there for spring training, and the catchers loved it because they actually want to see how still they can sit during the delivery of a 95 mile an hour fastball or an 82 mile an hour breaking curve while a batter is in the box swinging. And so we started finding these good applications, and to say it got legs and it's taken off, it's just been incredible. Yeah.
That's fantastic. It's just amazing how you can really diversify with V1 into so many different areas. Something else that you guys brought into the game, if you will, within the last year or so is V1 Game. Tell us about that app. What's, in your view, going to be a real game changer?
Yeah, no pun intended. It is. I spent, even before taking over as CEO, I firmly believe, and again, this, going back to our beginning conversation here, is one of the benefits, and there's probably many detractors of having a guy who played a high-level sport, was I got to see the benefit as an athlete at a high level with the use of technology and the difference that it made. Our team was owned, so I played in Detroit for 10 years. We were owned by the Ilitch family, who owned the Red Wings and the Detroit Tigers. So access to the latest technology was always available for us. And as you'd imagine, every company that had the newest widget wanted to get it in front of one of these groups. So as soccer players, we were the low-hanging fruit and easy ones to go to first. I always found that when you put something on my body, whether it was a marker or a vest or a wristband or whatever it was, we just perform differently. We do. And it's close, but we wanted to have something that didn't say, look, you got to have this on the end of your club, or you got to tap your belt, or we just want you to go play golf, and we want your stats to show up. Because if you do want to get better, I know I'm sounding like a broken record here, but if you don't know what you're going to go practice, then you're just shooting in the dark. And so, much like the pros have ShotLink, We wanted a way for someone to know not only what the score was, but where you're gaining and losing strokes to par. So we went through about a 3-year vetting process with probably 30 different companies, and we finally found a group out of Dallas, Texas called Pocket Par. We acquired them about almost 2 years ago now, and spent the first year of that existence bringing it into our ecosystem, so reformulating and formatting things. Their founder and 2 founding partners and lead developers came over, so we kept everybody on the team, and we rebranded that to V1 Game with, I'll say, a whole new look and feel. And literally, if you wear a watch, which you don't have to, but if you wear a watch, it knows when you make a golf swing that there's contact with a golf ball versus a practice swing. It knows where you are on the course. We map, 44,000 golf courses now, so not many around the world that aren't. And you just pick the tee you're playing from at the end of that hole, or you can do it at the end of the round. It doesn't matter. But at the end of the hole, if you say I made a 4 with 2 putts, the hole was 400 yards long. It knows out at about 270. That was probably Bryan's drive. There he was, and he probably had 130 in, which is probably his pitching wedge. He hit the green because it said he had 2 putts. Rinse, wash, repeat 18 holes later. It knows when I miss greens, when I 3-putt, when I do my stuff. The really nice part of it is I can send all that data on a per round basis. All automatically happens in the background. All that information goes to my teaching pro or pros if I have multiple. So, plenty of our players on the LPGA and PGA that are using this, and a lot of the mini tours love it because they don't just have one pro. But in my case, where I might be working with Darren down in Florida and Mike Fay here in Michigan, Mike's going to get my data, and you'd know this as a teacher. When someone walks up to that lesson tee and you have no idea what they want to work on, you're at the mercy of whatever comes out of their mouth, right? Hey, first of all, did you practice what I gave you? Yep, I did. How did it go? I didn't hit a single fairway in regulation. And what do they have in their hand? The driver. But if the data said they may not hit a fairway regulation, but it was between 265 and 270, mostly a little right, maybe only one pull left, and all of them were in play, my guess is, and then I went out and shot an 89, you'd say, Bryan, your driver's fine. Let's pick up your 7, 8, and 9 iron, right? Let's go work on your approach shots, because I don't think that's the problem. Well, if you've got all the data, boy, it's helpful to the instructor. It's helpful for the DIYers. So yeah, V1 Game has been literally a game changer. Again, it's tied into our whole ecosystem. So whether you want to record a swing on V1 Golf, your pros getting the data, it starts to create a much more holistic approach. And it does kind of follow that. If you're willing to practice, at least know what you should be practicing. And even if you never go see a golf pro to start, we give you kind of the output, which is what should you be working on next. We give you your 3 keys. And again, it's all based on data. So there's no emotion behind it. It just says, again, for me in my case, I guarantee you it's not going to be my driver. My driver's fine. It's going to say your shots lost around the green and your approaches with your 5 and 6 iron. And that's what I got to go work on. So it makes it exciting because then I can see results. And again, yes, my handicap will come down. That's kind of like if you enjoy what you do, the money will follow. If you enjoy the work, you're getting better at the game, your handicap will get lower. But do you really enjoy it? And yeah, well, now when I'm standing out there with a 6 iron in my hand, I get a lot more confidence because I know I just worked on it. Oddly enough, I'm not missing as many greens, and you get to see where it's going from there.
Yeah, I can't begin to tell you how many times, you go to the range and I'll see people out there swinging that driver, and, over the course of an hour, they might pull 1 or 2 other clubs out. That's it. And they're just all about hitting that driver, And you're right. You look at the stats and you say, well, how many fairways they hit? Well, I'm hitting the fairways now, but I need to get more distance. And I'll ask them about other parts of their game. And you're right. When you have the stats available and you can see where the weak areas of their game are, it's very easy to point out and say, hey, well, listen, it's not your driver that's giving you the problem. It's not your distance. It's your accuracy. It's your inconsistency with your iron shots. Your approaches are terrible. Or your putting, you're 3-putting, half the greens out there. So, we had, when John was on earlier, it's funny you mentioned that, but, when he was on, one of the questions was, we got a guy, he's about 46 years old, and he's using the super speed golf sticks, and he's, going to the gym, and he's doing all that, and he's trying to go from 95 miles an hour swing speed with a driver up to 105. Well, he's already an 8 handicap. He's trying to get down to a 5, and, that may not be his problem. And he's hitting pretty much most of the fairways. So his driver is not the problem. it's another area. I mean, we obviously haven't seen him, but going by what he's describing. So you're right. Having that information is invaluable, not only for the students, but particularly for the coaches to be able to see where the key areas are that they're struggling with and seeing what the results are and being able to give them a more defined focus rather than just having them out there sort of willy-nilly doing whatever in all aspects of the game. It may not be their driver, or it may not be their putting that's bad. It may be another part of their game that they're not focusing on. And a lot of times people will stay away. For instance, bunkers is a big problem for a lot of people, and it's because they don't enjoy working to improve in their bunker shots. Well, and they wonder why they can never get out of a bunker. Well, if you never go and practice it, you're never going to improve. So, this obviously V1 Game app is going to be able to help a lot of instructors, particularly, be able to see where some of the problems are, and takes a lot of that guesswork out. And kudos to you guys for coming up with that and getting it to where it is. I want to, as we get closer to our time here, I want to move on. You guys, as I mentioned earlier on, you guys have added to the portfolio Galway Bay rainwear and stuff. What brought this product into your vision?
Yeah, quite frankly, it started us a mentorship. I was working with the original founder, Terry Perlman, who's just a great guy. I loved his company. I loved his gear. As we forged a relationship over part of a year, it was, hey, I want to grow this. I want to expand the product line. Let's raise a little capital. So I helped him do that. And then ultimately wanted to have a buyout. He was kind of like, I've kind of got it to where I want to be, and I'd love to kind of, move on to my next thing. So we created a plan to work with Terry and buy him out. And I just love the fact it's a very technical fabric. And again, it goes back to what we were just talking about with V1 Game. I don't want to put a bunch of junk on my body and feel like I'm doing something different. So, without being disparaging towards other brands, there are a few that when you put them on, man, you might be in 40-degree weather, but you're sweating like a pig, and you're hearing all this crunching, and I'm not sure I really enjoy playing golf like that. So we wanted to come up with something that was just a simple, really highly technical fabric. We're not the only ones that do it. Certainly there's other great companies that do. But we're kind of a niche, cool company that we've got some really nice fits. We've got a very loyal customer base. And at Galway Bay, we've got no questions asked, money-back guarantee that still to this day, I'd tell you, we've probably done it a dozen times maybe. But just the fact that someone can call up and say, I just didn't like it. Or, certainly if there's a bad fit, we take care of that all the time. But we kind of put our money where our mouth is, that if this isn't the lightest, quietest, and this isn't something you stick in your golf bag. We make slacks that you can wear with a belt, tuck your shirt in. I mean, you look sharp. You're bulletproof from a weather perspective. I went and played 7 days in Ireland, not this last October, obviously, but the one before that. And all but 2 guys had Galway Bay gear on, and we got 6 straight days of bad weather. And the guys in the GD gear were loving it, and they played. And the 2 guys who did not play the last 2 days. They were just kind of done. And, I sort of poking fun at them, but at the end of the day, it's like, guys, that was an easy one. The guy who's sitting near the top. I told you I could get you some gear, and they were hell-bent on wearing something that cost 3 times as much, and they didn't like it. So, shame on them, I guess.
Well, on a side note, 6 days of rain in Ireland are good days, by the way. It's sometimes can be difficult weather, so it's nice to have the rainwear. And let me just say on a personal note, because I have some of that rainwear, and let me just say one of the things I really like about it, besides being great quality, is you guys make it for tall people too. I've seen some other stuff out there. I'm 6'4", I'm long in the legs, and there's a lot of other stuff, and you guys have done a good job in really hitting all of the markets. Not everybody's 6 feet or less. There's a few of us tall guys out there, and there's nothing worse when you slip something on and you're doing a moonwalk because you look like Michael Jackson with your socks showing and stuff. So, no pun towards him, of course, but yeah, it's nice. You guys did a great job with that, so I certainly understand why you wanted to bring that into the fold. So what's next for you guys with Opportunity Seed? What's coming down the pike? guys have gotten involved in sports performance improvement, outerwear now, training, sport training facilities. You're getting all kinds of things. What else is coming down the pike?
Yeah, really, it's going to be a double down on V1. I mean, I think at the end of the day, we've realized, again, a great sort of rebirth with what's going on in golf. Baseball has just been hot for us, and the idea that we can introduce AI into that, I go for it. If it just works for an instructor, it doesn't work for everybody. And if it just works for a consumer, it doesn't work for anybody. So we like to believe that we're, empowering coaches and athletes to be their best. We have an equal responsibility to both a coach and an athlete. And so we look at things like a personal launch monitor that we're pretty far down the path to releasing here at the end of the year. We obviously have our pressure mat that works both in golf and baseball. Ironically, it works very well in soccer too, selfishly speaking. We're going to be launching V1 TV, which for thousands of golf pros, and John certainly, sounds like one of them, that has all this great content. And quite frankly, you put it out on YouTube and you say, well, it's just now gone, right? Anyone can consume it. I have no idea who's using it. I have no idea if it's effective. I'm not making any money on it. And why should I do any more of it? So we're going to try to clean some of that up in the golf and baseball industry. And then probably the end of the first quarter of 2022, we're going to announce it at the show will be V1 Practice. And I think it's sort of a capstone of what we've been talking about today. It's how do I go out and practice? Can someone build me a game plan? And most importantly, it's kind of gamified. And you'd love this as an instructor. Did I actually do it? So to me, if those check marks aren't there and you don't have your badge attached, which means you did it, you're not showing up to the lesson tee. And we've had a lot of instructors say exactly what you did. I want to teach people who want to learn. There's a way to do it. Now, certainly you could fake it, but at the end of the day, go out and put in the work. You're going to enjoy the path, and it's kind of an easy way to track it. So we're pretty excited about all that.
Yeah, I think that's great, and it's going to help. It's not just the players, but the coaches as well. It's frustrating from our standpoint. There's nothing worse, and we all have to eat, and of course we have to earn a living and make money in that. But there's nothing worse than when somebody's paying for lessons and they're not doing their part. If you're certainly honest, there becomes a point you feel guilty, and you're saying to yourself, "Look, I feel bad. I'm taking this guy's money." And he's not doing anything. He's not putting his part. He's not improving, and you feel bad that, and then you start to, you question yourself and saying, "Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing this? Am I presenting the right package?" And then when you look at it a little deeper and you see that, this particular individual is just not, jumping in and is looking, as I said earlier, for this quick fix, it doesn't exist. And you've got to be willing to put that time and effort in and prepare yourself. And if you're not willing to do that, then you're just wasting your time, money, and effort. And like you said, if you're a 10 handicap and you're okay with that, hey, just go on up, grab your clubs and go out and do it. But if you really want to improve, then you've got to bring something to the table other than just your checkbook. And I think, companies like V1 and that who are out there trying to, open the doors and open the minds, if you will, of people out there and saying, here's a way that we can do things, not only from the student's perspective, but from the coach's perspective, to make it more efficient, make it more enjoyable, and get the results that they're looking for by giving them information that they can actually use, and not just a lot of double speak and marketing terminology and things like that, but actually giving them things that are going to ultimately make the game fun for them. Because you're right, handicaps are great. It's nice to have a 5 handicap, or say you're a 10 handicap even, but at the end of the day, if you're not having fun during the process, after a while it just gets to a point where you drift off and you don't want to play anymore. And that's unfortunately what's happened with some golfers out there, and we need to do a better job in keeping them on board. It's one thing getting them coming into the door, it's another thing keeping them there. So you guys are doing a great job, and I will keep in touch with Kevin and Carl, and I know you know who I'm talking about, and let them know as soon as the launch monitor is going to be made public and available. We'll get something in Golf Tips on that.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Yeah, I think it's going to be a nice game changer for everybody, because again, you're not just seeing numbers. It's going to be integrated into the entire platform, and so you can take what you're doing on the course, exactly what you're talking about there, Ted. That you can take what you do on the course. And I've yet to meet an instructor who says, My whole goal is to deliver mediocre lessons to people who don't want to be here. So,
right.
Exactly. Let's empower both sides of that equation to do some really powerful lessons on the tee with people who are thrilled to be there because they love whatever it is that they want to work on. That's the reason. And we'd say, man, that's why we're doing it. So that's our goal.
Yep. Bryan, very quickly, where can folks go to learn more about V1?
Well, v1sports.com, the easiest place. Bryan at v1sports.com. If you got any questions after the show, certainly shoot them my way. We love to help. So v1sports.com, easiest place to find us.
And what about Galway Bay? If they're interested in some of the rain gear, where can they go for that? What's the site?
Yeah, galwaybaygolf.com. So galwaybaygolf.com.
Perfect. Bryan, thank you very much. As always, it's been a pleasure. Always like to feel like I learned something from my guests, and I hope you enjoyed yourself, and we'll definitely have you back and maybe get you back before the year's out when you're ready to do your next launch, and we'll get a heads up on that perhaps. But appreciate you coming on and sharing some time with the audience.
Well, always appreciate spending time with you, Ted. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a great weekend and continue doing the great stuff that you guys are doing, and I look forward to seeing what else new and exciting may be coming down the pike for 2022.
Sounds great.
All right. Thanks, Bryan. All right. That was Bryan Finnerty, CEO and founder of Opportunity Seed Capital, also V1 Sports, and also Galway Bay rain gear. You can go to v1sports.com or you can go to galwaybaycom to check out both of those. I want to thank everybody, and again, special thanks to PGA instructor John Decker for joining me earlier on the Coach's Corner panel. And as always, I will see you next week with another great panel discussion on Coach's Corner and another great interview guest. Hope you'll join us. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this week's broadcast of Golf Talk Live. We'd like to thank this week's Coach's Corner panel, and a special thank you to tonight's guest. Remember to join Ted every Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Central on Golf Talk Live. And be sure to follow Ted on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you're interested in being a guest on Golf Talk Live, send Ted an email at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. This has been a production of the iGolf Sports Network.